everyone, welcome to Drop Everything and Read Day. My name is Erin and I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the Alpharetta branch of the Fulton County Library System. And today I want to share with you one of my favorite novels. It's called The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. It was originally published in 1905. And Edith Wharton is one of the writers that Julian Fellowes has cited as one of his biggest influences when he created Downton Abbey. So if you're a fan of Downton Abbey, I think you would really enjoy a lot of Edith Wharton's novels. The House of Mirth is about a woman named Lily Bart, and she has been raised in New York high society around the turn of the century, and she is raised to be a wife and a mother. But at 29 years old, she is getting a little too old to get married, and she doesn't have a lot of money, so she does need to find someone to marry who has money. So I'm going to read an excerpt for you, and this is from the very beginning of the book. Selden paused in surprise. In the afternoon rush of Grand Central Station, his eyes had been refreshed by the sight of Miss Lily Bart. It was a Monday in early September, and he was returning to his work from a hurried dip in the country. But what was Miss Bart doing in town at that season? If she had appeared to be catching a train, he might have inferred that he had come on her in the act of transition between one and another of the country houses, which disputed her presence after the close of the Newport season. But her desultory air perplexed him. She stood apart from the crowd, letting it drift by her on to the platform or the street, and wearing an air of irresolution which might, as he surmised, be the mask of a very definite purpose. It struck him at once that she was waiting for someone, but he hardly knew why the idea arrested him. There was nothing new about Lily Bart, yet he could never see her without a faint movement of interest. It was characteristic of her that she always roused speculation, that her simplest acts seemed the result of far-reaching intentions. An impulse of curiosity made him turn out of his direct line to the door and stroll past her. He knew that if she did not wish to be seen, she would contrive to elude him, and it amused him to think of putting her skill to the test. "Mr. Selden, what good luck!" She came forward smiling, eager almost in her resolve to intercept him. One or two persons, in brushing past them, lingered to look. For Miss Bart was a figure to arrest even the suburban traveler rushing to his last train. Selden had never seen her more radiant. Her vivid head, relieved against the dull tints of the crowd, made her more conspicuous than in a ballroom, and under her dark hat and veil she regained the girlish smoothness, the purity of tint, that she was beginning to lose after 11 years of late hours in indefatigable dancing. Was it really 11 years, Selden found himself wondering, and had she indeed reached the 20th birthday with which her rivals credited her? "What luck," she repeated. "How nice of you to come to my rescue." He responded joyfully that to do so was his mission in life, and asked what form the rescue was to take. "Oh, almost any, even to sitting on a bench and talking to me. One sits out a cotillion, why not sit out a train? It isn't a bit hotter in here than in Mrs. Van Osburgh's conservatory, and some of the women are not a bit uglier." She broke off laughing to explain that she had come up to town from Tuxedo on her way to the Gus Treners at Bellamont, and had missed the 3:15 train to Rhinebeck. "And there isn't another until 5:30. She consulted the little jeweled watch among her laces. "Just 2 hours to wait. And I don't know what to do with myself. My maid came up this morning to do some shopping for me and was to go on to Bellamont at 1 o'clock. And my aunt's house is closed, and I don't know a soul in town." She glanced plaintively about the station. "It is hotter than Mrs. Van Osburgh's after all. If you can spare the time, do take me somewhere for a breath of air." He declared himself entirely at her disposal. The adventure struck him as diverting. As a spectator, he had always enjoyed Lily Bart, and his course lay so far out of her orbit that it amused him to be drawn for a moment into the sudden intimacy which her proposal implied. "Shall we go over to Sherry's for a cup of tea?" She smiled assentingly, and then made a slight grimace. "So many people come up to town on a Monday. One is sure to meet a lot of bores. I'm old as the hills, of course, and it ought not to make any difference, but if I'm old enough, you're not," she objected gaily. "I'm dying for tea, but isn't there a quieter place?" He answered her smile, which rested on him vividly. Her discretions interested him almost as much as her imprudences. He was so sure that both were part of the same carefully elaborated plan. "The resources of New York are rather meager," he said. "But I'll find a hansom first, and then we'll invent something." A rapid shower had cooled the air, and the clouds still hung refreshingly over the moist street. "How delicious! Let us walk a little," she said, as they emerged from the station. They turned into Madison Avenue and began to stroll northward. As she moved beside him with her long, light step, Selden was conscious of taking a luxurious pleasure in her nearness. In the modeling of her little ear, the crisp upward wave of her hair, was it ever so slightly brightened by art? And the thick planting of her straight black lashes. Everything about her was at once vigorous and exquisite, at once strong and fine. As he reached this point in his speculations, the sun came out, and her lifted parasol cut off his enjoyment. A moment or two later, she paused with a sigh. "Oh dear, I'm so hot and thirsty, and what a hideous place New York is." She looked despairingly up and down the dreary thoroughfare. Other cities put on their best clothes in summer, but New York seems to sit in its shirt sleeves. Her eyes wandered down one of the side streets. "Someone has had the humanity to plant a few trees over there. Let us go into the shade." "I am glad my street meets with your approval," said Selden, as they turned the corner. "Your street? Do you live here?" She glanced with interest along the new brick and limestone house fronts, fantastically varied in obedience to the American craving for novelty, but fresh and inviting with their awnings of flower boxes. "Ah, yes, to be sure, the Benedict. What a nice-looking building. I don't think I've ever seen it before." She looked across at the flat house with its marble porch and pseudo-Georgian facade. "Which are your windows? Those with the awnings down?" "On the top floor, yes." "And that nice little balcony is yours? How cool it looks up there." He paused a moment. "Come up and see," he suggested. "I can give you a cup of tea in no time, and you won't meet any bores." Her color deepened. She still had the art of blushing at the right time, but she took the suggestion as lightly as it was made. "Why not? It's too tempting. I'll take the risk," she declared. "Oh, I'm not dangerous," he said in the same key. In truth, he had never liked her so well as at that moment. He knew she had accepted without afterthought. He could never be a factor in her calculations, and there was a surprise, a refreshment almost, in the spontaneity of her consent. On the threshold he paused a moment, feeling for his latchkey. "There's no one here, but I have a servant who is supposed to come in the mornings, and it's just possible he may have put out the tea things and provided some cake." He ushered her into a slip of a hall hung with old prints. She noticed the letters and notes heaped on the table among his gloves and sticks. Then she found herself in a small library, dark but cheerful, with its walls of books, a pleasantly faded turkey rug, and a littered desk, and, as he foretold, a tea tray on a low table near the window. A breeze had sprung up, swaying inward the muslin curtains and bringing a fresh scent of mignonette and petunias from the flower box on the balcony. Lily sank with a sigh into one of the shabby leather chairs. How delicious to have a place like this all to oneself. What a miserable thing it is to be a woman. She leaned back in a luxury of discontent. Selden was rummaging in a cupboard for the cake. "Even women," he said, "have been known to enjoy the privileges of a flat." Oh, governesses are widows, but not girls, not poor, miserable, marriageable girls. I even know a girl who lives in a flat. She sat up in surprise. You do? I do, he assured her, emerging from the cupboard with the sought-for cake. Oh, I know. You mean Gertie Farish. She smiled a little unkindly. But I said marriageable. And besides, she has a horrid little place and no maid. Her cook does the washing and the food tastes of soap. I should hate that, you know. You shouldn't dine with her on wash days, said Selden, cutting the cake. They both laughed, and he knelt by the table to light the lamp under the kettle, while she measured out the tea into a little teapot of green glaze. As he watched her hand, polished as a bit of old ivory, with its slender pink nails, and the sapphire bracelet slipping over her wrist, he was struck with the irony of suggesting to her a life such as his cousin Gertrude Farish had chosen. She was so evidently the victim of the civilization which had produced her, that the links of her bracelet seemed like manacles chaining her to her fate. She seemed to read his thought. It was horrid of me to say that of Gertie, she said with charming compunction. I forgot she was your cousin. But we're so different, you know. She likes being good, and I like being happy. Besides, she is free, and I am not. If I were, I dare say I could manage to be happy even in her flat. But it must be pure bliss to arrange the furniture just as one likes, and give all the horrors to the ashman. If I could only do over my aunt's drawing room, I know I should be a better woman. So that's the very beginning of The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton, and I hope you enjoyed it.